Icarus is famously known as the boy who flew too close to the sun. His myth is a cautionary tale that people often use to warn others to not become overly ambitious or greedy. Why did Icarus do it? How did this tale turn into tragedy? To understand the story of Icarus, we need to look back to the story of his father, Daedalus. Daedalus was born in Athens. His parentage was added on later works and doesn't have any bearing towards his mythos. In Athens, Daedalus was quite a famous sculptor and artist. The statues he made were said to have been uncannily lifelike. Some even say it captured the essence of divinity. His statues were so good, the mythos said that they had to be tied down with ropes or else they would gain a life of their own and walk away. He wasn't just an artist though, he was also somewhat of an inventor. Some works of ancient Greek origin had written him down as the man who invented carpentry during those times. At that time, Daedalus was renowned for his genius in artistry and inventions. Since his intelligence had become so well known across the land, his sister, Perdix, thought it was a good idea to send her son Talos to go study with Daedalus in Athens. At first, Daedalus was happy to have an apprentice, much more so that it was his own nephew. He taught his methods and ways of thinking in artistry and tinkering to Talos, and the boy absorbed everything perfectly. Talos took in everything Daedalus had to teach and began applying it to the world around him. Daedalus saw what Talos was capable of, and a feeling of insecurity started to fester in him. As time went by and Talos' apprenticeship continued, Daedalus felt that Talos wasn't just smart, he was smarter than Daedalus. The student was becoming the master and Daedalus didn't like it. Daedalus thought that if this went on, Talos would overshadow Daedalus and the reputation he had built, so a plot began to grow. Sometime after, Daedalus brought Talos to the Acropolis in Athens that sits above a rocky cliff. Luring Talos to the cliff, Daedalus pushed him down with the intent to kill. As Talos fell, Daedalus felt a sense of relief, but the goddess Athena saw what was happening and intervened. At that moment, Athena transformed Talos into a partridge, a bird that shared the same name as Talos' mother, Perdix. Although Talos now had to live the rest of his life in the form of a partridge, Talos was spared from a gruesome death by the hands of his uncle. Daedalus didn't get away scot-free though. His deed was made known to the authorities and he was tried for his crimes. As his punishment, Daedalus was banished from Athens. After getting exiled from his own hometown, Daedalus later found refuge in Crete under the protection of King Minos. Daedalus strived to live his days peacefully in Crete, doing as best as he can to mend his ways and atone for his past deeds. It was during this time that young Icarus was born to Daedalus through a slave woman. Daedalus loved Icarus and tried to provide for him as best as he could in Crete, hoping for as normal a life as possible for the boy. But a life of mundane was not what fate had in store for Daedalus. One day he was called over by the queen, Pasiphae, to solve a conundrum she had. Pasiphae asked for Daedalus to figure out a way for her to mate with the great bull. To better understand this conundrum, let's rewind a bit. A few days earlier, King Minos had asked Poseidon to give him a divine sign. He wanted to be sure that his right to rule, rather than his brother's, was absolute, so he asked Poseidon to give him a sign in the form of a beautiful bull. Minos swore that he would return the bull back to Poseidon by sacrificing it to the god. With this very specific rule in mind, that the bull would be sacrificed, Poseidon granted King Minos' wish and sent down a beautiful bull, which was unlike any other bull the king had ever seen. In ancient texts, the bull is often referred to as the Cretan bull. Minos was overjoyed that his prayer had been heard and his rule was justified by Poseidon, but the greedy king beheld the bull and saw that it was a very beautiful specimen. Sacrificing it seemed like such a loss. Overcome with greed, the foolish king broke his promise to Poseidon and instead sacrificed another bull, a normal one, in its place. Poseidon was furious at this transgression. He had held up his side of the deal and was blatantly betrayed by King Minos. Poseidon wouldn't have it. He thought of the perfect punishment for the vain king. Poseidon would use the king's object of affection to humiliate him. So the god of the sea turned his gaze towards the queen of Crete, Pasiphae, and used her to punish Minos. Poseidon had instilled a madness within Pasiphae that made her want to mate with the Cretan bull, but the bull had gone a bit wild and every time Pasiphae approached it, the bull would act up. This was the conundrum Pasiphae had. Knowing Daedalus to be the smartest man in the kingdom, Pasiphae called for him and ordered him to fashion a way in which she can mate with the Cretan bull. Unable to disobey an order from the queen, Daedalus got to working immediately. For this particular problem, Daedalus carved a wooden cow on wheels. He then proceeded to carve out the insides of the wooden cow statue, leaving a hollowing inside that's just enough for a certain queen. To finish up, he then layered the wooden statue with the hides of a female cow, and he put the statue on the grass fields that the Cretan bull usually comes through. With everything set in place, Pasiphae got inside the wooden cow and waited. When the Cretan bull finally showed up, it saw the disguised cow statue there and immediately proceeded to mate with it. Pasiphae finally got what she desired. Much to King Minos' misfortune, Pasiphae got pregnant and gave birth to the Minotaur, which was a half-bull, half-human hybrid. The Minotaur was no mere creature. Poseidon had imbued it with his rage, causing it to wreak havoc upon the land of Crete. The poor king was horrified when he saw what had come out of his wife's womb. He immediately called upon Daedalus and ordered him to fashion a prison of sorts that could contain the Minotaur safely inside and hide it from the public eye. So Daedalus went to work again. To hide the Minotaur, Daedalus engineered a labyrinth with halls that can shift by itself. It was nothing short of miraculous, as the paths regularly changed. No creature that entered could ever map out the labyrinth and find the exit. Upon its completion, the Minotaur was immediately imprisoned in it, hiding the abominable product of King Minos' greed from prying eyes. Later on, King Minos would use the Minotaur and the labyrinth to terrorize Athens. After losing his son Androgeus in a game held by King Aegeus of Athens, King Minos assaulted Athens and managed to conquer it. He demanded the kingdom of Athens to send tributes in the form of 7 young men and 7 maidens every 9 years, or he'd burn down Athens to the ground. These tributes would be made to go inside the labyrinth to be hunted down by the Minotaur with no chance of escaping. If you've watched our video on Theseus, you'll remember the story of how Theseus defeated the Minotaur with the help of Ariadne, the king's daughter, and Daedalus. Life in Crete was far from the one that Daedalus had envisioned for him and Icarus, and he had come to dislike Crete for it. But the king didn't want Daedalus to leave Crete. He wouldn't let him. Some versions say that the king wanted Daedalus' intelligence all for himself. Others say that Minos had found out about Daedalus' role in helping realize Pasiphae's adultery and in helping Theseus escape the labyrinth. Whatever the reason was, Daedalus ended up imprisoned along with his son Icarus when he tried to leave Crete. Life in prison was harsh, much more so for Daedalus as he also had to care for Icarus in there. But Daedalus hadn't given up just yet. He was not just any man, he was the best inventor in the world, so he went to work. He looked through the window of his cell and saw the ocean below him and the sky above him. He told Icarus that escape by land or sea would be met by Minos' guards, but the sky was open to them. With his mind set on the sky above, Daedalus watched the birds and paid attention to how they flew. He then collected bird feathers and laid them out in order from shortest to longest. Using beeswax and threads, he tied up the feathers and glued them together in such a way that it resembled giant bird wings. As he was finishing up his newest creation, he told Icarus how to use the wings and of his plan to escape the prison. With a serious and grim tone, Daedalus cautioned Icarus that they must not fly too high, close to the sun, or too low, close to the sea. They must keep flying between the two extremities, as flying too close to the sun will melt the wax that glued the wings together, and flying too close to the sea will cause moisture to add weight to the wings. Being the young boy that he was, Icarus simply said yes to his father's instructions, not really understanding the danger of ignoring it. As they prepared to commence their escape, Daedalus hugged Icarus one last time and gave him a kiss. He was scared, terrified even, but he had no other choice. He readied his heart and then leapt off the window of his prison, wings in hands. Daedalus' invention had worked. He was flying through the sky. Icarus followed suit and copied what Daedalus did. Thankfully, both their wings had worked without fail. After a brief lesson on how to use their wings properly, Daedalus led their flight away from Crete with Icarus following closely behind. The flight wasn't easy, but some time later they finally made it out of the domain of Crete, free from the clutches of King Minos at last. But they weren't safe yet, as they were still trying to find land. It was during this short moment of elation that tragedy struck. As they were nearing the island of Samos, Icarus thought they were safe at last. This sense of security made Icarus arrogant and careless. Giddy with excitement, Icarus flapped his wings and soared high in the sky as close to the sun as he could. As he flew higher, the weight in his hands felt lighter. It was his wings becoming undone. When all the wax had melted away, Icarus then noticed that his hands were naked again and he began to fall. Icarus yelled out his father's name as he fell, but Daedalus heard it too late. When he turned around to find Icarus, the young boy had plunged into the sea. Moments later, Daedalus found Icarus's body floating above the sea, surrounded by feathers. Cursing his own inventions, Daedalus went to the nearest island and buried Icarus there. As he was burying his son, a partridge came and hovered next to Daedalus. It was Talos, coming to have the last laugh at Daedalus. Although this is where Icarus' story ends, Daedalus' story didn't end here. After burying Icarus, Daedalus continued his flight and reached Sicily, where he was received and offered refuge by the king. When Minos had discovered Daedalus' escape, he was outraged and wanted to get Daedalus back. He devised a way to find Daedalus, which was actually quite smart. King Minos proclaimed that a hefty prize would be given to anyone that could pass a thread through a spiral shell. When the news reached Sicily, the king consulted Daedalus, and of course, Daedalus said he could do it. First, Daedalus drilled a small hole at the end of the spiral shell. Then he tied a small thread to an ant and let the ant enter the shell through the small hole he drilled. The ant eventually came out the other end, successfully completing the challenge. When the king of Sicily presented his solution, King Minos knew at once that it was Daedalus who solved it, as he knew that no other man or divine being would ever be smart enough to solve this problem. So he mustered up the Cretan army and sailed for Sicily to seize back Daedalus. Luckily, his siege on Sicily failed, and in the midst of battle, Minos was slain. Daedalus was finally truly free. Though his intelligence had brought him much anguish and misery, Daedalus never tried to discard or deny it. His originality, creativity, and intelligence were always a part of him no matter what situation he was in, and it became a trademark of his identity in ancient Greek mythology.